Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the topic on mainstream adoption of digital currencies and investing in alternative assets. My name is Eric Richmond, the Chief Operating Officer at Coinsquare, and I'm joined today by Jason Busher, the CEO of CoinPayments, Ryan Wang, the founding partner at Outpost Capital, and Alice Davidson, the VP and General Counsel at MOGO. Before we get into the panel, we have a bunch of interesting people here, so I'll let them introduce themselves. And so I will pass it off to Alice to kick it off.
Sure, thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. As Eric mentioned, I'm the VP General Counsel at MOGO. MOGO is a Vancouver-based consumer fintech that's listed on the TSX and the NASDAQ. We've got a suite of digital financial services for our more than 1 million members across Canada, including our MOGO crypto offering in partnership with Coinsquare. I've been with MOGO for about 5 years now. Prior to that, I was a corporate securities lawyer at a large national firm. And yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Jason, over to you.
Great, thank you. Jason Butcher, I'm the CEO of CoinPayments. We were originally started in Vancouver. Today, we're a global payments platform. We support over 1 million clients globally. We processed, last month, we processed over $700 million in crypto transactions, supporting merchants around the world with our technology and API solutions.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Nice. Thanks for being here. And Ryan, over to you.
Absolutely. Good to meet everyone here. My name is Ryan Wang. I'm the founding partner of Outpost Capital. So we started in 2015, and we are a Silicon Valley-based VC firm focused on frontier technology investments. So over the past few years, we've been investing in a number of sectors like immersive computing, VR, AR, artificial intelligence, robotics, and blockchain. So in the blockchain space, we pretty much have covered the whole ecosystem from exchanges to different type of mining companies to different type of dApps. And I think the recent trend in the Metaverse and NFT has kind of becoming a new convergence point of a lot of interesting new things, bringing the content creators, the artists, the technologists, and the crypto community together. So it's interesting to talk about the actual adoption of the blockchain and these innovative systems from this perspective as well.
Thanks a lot, Ryan, and yeah, thanks for being here. And just briefly on myself and Coinsquare. Coinsquare is Canada's leading digital asset trading platform. We offer a trading of over 10 assets and have been in the business since 2014. But I mean, to kick off the conversation, and maybe this goes into the second half of what the topic is, investing in alternative assets. But since Ryan kind of brought it up in his preamble, I'll start with him. You mentioned Metaverse. So what is Metaverse, and why should we care?
Oh, actually, Metaverse is not a new thing, right? It's a word that has been there for quite a long time, from different science fictions and different movies like The Matrix and the Oasis in Ready Player One. These are all different type of metaverses, right? Today, I think well, partially thanks to COVID, a lot of us are spending decent amount of time living our life in the digital way, right? So my personal definition about Metaverse is really the digital lifestyle, right? So think about something that you are not doing physically, but you are doing digitally, right? And a lot of people say, hey, platforms like Fortnite or Roblox, these are video games, and there's wars within these video games. So these are the direct metaverse. Yes, so I think these are metaverses, but if we think beyond what's in the gaming space and think about what's in some other sectors, we may exercise on Peloton or Mirror, right? That's a digital way to do exercise. We may have this kind of conferences over Zoom or Google Hangout, right? So we are getting some collaboration or communication done through these platforms. So to me, I think these different behavior are all different type of metaverses. So I think it's nothing new. It's been there for quite a while, but thanks to the pandemic, metaverse and digital lifestyle become a new normal in this world.
So, and thanks for that. I guess one follow-up question would be, so how does one venture into this brave new world? Are we already kind of doing it right now?
Well, I think we are, right? So, at this point, we see a lot of activities in the crypto and blockchain space. We see new transactions, we see new applications being built out every day, and we see, a lot of actual use cases that's happening in the decentralized finance space. We see a lot of transactions in the NFT space, right? So everything that's happening in the cryptocurrency, in the blockchain space, I think, it's basically a digitization of the transaction, digitization of value, of passing value to each other, right? And I think, in that way, that's kind of like the value chain in the whole metaverse ecosystem. And, if you are trading cryptocurrency, if you are, purchasing or trading NFTs, or if you are, doing any kind of digital exercise, doing Zoom calls and things like this, I think we are already kind of in the metaverse, and part of your life are already in the metaverse. But I think, what's interesting is not what's happening now, but what will happen starting from here, right? So I'll give you an example. So far, we don't have a unified identity across, different applications and different type of use cases that I talk about, right? Our identity when we get on Zoom is different from our identity when we get on a game like Roblox, and it's different when we do exercise, right? But our identity in the physical world is consistent, but our identity in the different type of metaverses are spread out. So I think, one thing that we can see is that I think moving forward for the different metaverses, there will be different, interoperability type of opportunity that's created, so that, information can be aligned and can be consistent across different metaverses as well. So, if we think about like what are some of the potentials having this kind of consistent identity across different metaverses, and what kind of value can we unlock starting from there? I think the future is even more interesting than what is happening because of the pandemic right now.
Eric, it reminds me personally, I go back quite a ways in the internet space. In the early 92, 93, we developed a platform called the World Shopping Network. And the whole idea of that in the early 90s and into the late 90s was developing what the internet is today. And then you started looking at platforms like Second Life and other organizations and platforms that were converging to bring digital life towards the mainstream of real life. And we see this massive adoption from everything going towards digital for a number of reasons. One is now we have access to compression. We have access to the digital transactional systems. All the things that we were imagining in early 90s are all coming together today because we have the infrastructure, we have the technology, we have the systems that are available, and we have adoption. And, when we're talking about adoption, when it comes to digital payments, digital exchange of value, digital exchange of products, digital exchange, it's becoming what our world is really about. Of course, people still like personal interaction too. So, we still crave this interaction. COVID has helped us become much more digital. Why we're having a conversation today on Zoom is probably a much big reason, or so much reason, because of COVID specifically. Now, we still would have already started merging towards this evolution of digital connection.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah, and I think, you bring up the topic of adoption, which I definitely want to get into, as it's a key topic of what we should discuss today. So, maybe I'll ask this question to Alice. From an adoption and growth perspective, what's that look like right now, both in the crypto space, but also just digital assets in general?
Clicking on the wrong unmute button. Someone's got to do it, right? So, I think maybe I'll preface my remarks. I was thinking about this discussion today and looking back to, 2017, when I think really the topic of blockchain and cryptocurrencies really started to sort of pick up again mainstream acceptance a little bit. And, there was all these bold pronouncements that blockchain was going to disrupt all industries, from banking and traditional services to logistics and freight and real estate, and that, governments were going to come up with their own coins and use digital currencies, all this access to the unbanked and the underbanked. And companies were scrambling to figure out, okay, what the hell is a, ICO? How do I do one? How do I do my own coin? How do I get into mining? And all of that has continued and has sort of streamlined. But from a sort of a consumer and institutional investor perspective, there was much less of that, frenzy and that interest. And I think a lot of that was there was very little opportunity to adopt. And that's really changed. 4 years later, I think both Ryan and Jason mentioned it, that COVID has really accelerated the digital adoption by consumers, individuals, but businesses and institutions alike. There's, on the one hand, consumers are, we're to your point, we're not having these physical interactions. Everything is happening digitally, but institutions quickly caught on of, God, there's these, crazy economic burden of the pandemic. Let's start investing in Bitcoin and other altcoins, and seeing this opportunity to sort of offset that economic burden and that loss. And, through all that, you've got Bitcoin that is increasingly being viewed as an asset class, right? I think it's pretty widely accepted as an asset class now. It's the best performing asset class of the last 2 years. Yes, there's been volatility, but there's also been all-time highs and dips and returns. And I think from a consumer perspective, there's just more awareness. We've sort of demystified this of, people aren't so concerned about what is distributed ledger technology and understanding how to mine and sort of everything behind it versus, okay, it's here for me to either invest in or use, right? And those investment opportunities and those use cases have really grown over the past year, 2 years. From a consumer perspective, I look at Canada, we've got Eric, we've got Coinsquare, we've got MOGO, two companies offering that. We've got Wealthsimple as some of the homegrown names. You've got Coinbase, who's got 56 million verified users worldwide. As I think as of the last quarter, they obviously, we all know they've recently IPO'd and quite a large IPO there. You've got Binance, you've got actual legitimate crypto trading platforms that provide the means to safely and securely invest, whether it be Bitcoin or an altcoin. It's not this sort of mystical metaverse, if you will. People truly do have easy access, easy means, easy way to understand it. From a corporate perspective as well. And, you've got, I think it's nearly 50 companies right now that have publicly, including about 24 public companies who have said they have cryptocurrency on their balance sheets. I think, I looked at a number from last month, but it was about a $1.3 million worth of Bitcoin held by these companies, which I think today's worth would be about 70 billion US dollars. And you've got, on the one hand, companies that are in the space, whether it's, a Marathon who's in mining or a Coinbase who's actually has custody of these assets, but to Tesla and Square and MassMutual, a massive insurance giant that are, basically believing in it as an asset class, seeing the opportunity, helping to fuel that adoption at the consumer level. You've got traditional Wall Street institutions and banks who, in the beginning was all about, blockchain is going to, it's decentralized. It's going to upend and disrupt and make our financial system fall apart. Well, you've got, JP Morgan, who's got their own coin. You've got Mellon Bank of New York, I think the oldest institution in the United States, who is looking to basically offer the same sort of services that it does for cash today for crypto. So I think it's been a recognition of, okay, there's been an understanding of what it is and the recognition of it's here to stay. Is that adoption widespread? No, I think it's only beginning. I think it's, there's still a long ways to go. Part of that is maybe the lack of regulation, particularly on the consumer side, also on the institutional side of, people being unable to invest or companies being unable to invest because of constraints of it not being regulated. But that is changing. I know we'll get into that topic a little bit later. But it's incredible. I think the rate of adoption and the rate of awareness that has really happened over the last couple of years, and it's going to take more than you've got this ability to invest now in these coins and in cryptocurrency, whether it's directly through the platforms that we've mentioned, or you've got ETFs that are crypto-based. You've got Purpose Investments in Canada, or you've got, I'm drawing a blank on the American version of it, but Grayscale, right? And so whether you have either at a consumer or institution, you've got the ability to invest directly into the asset, or if you don't want to, you want to maybe just get your feet wet, you can follow an index that basically tracks a bunch of companies that have that exposure. So there's just more, I think, just more opportunity, and we've kind of, like I said, dumbed down the grandness of it and really focused on the one piece of okay, the ability to invest in this asset class, and then the secondary, of course, is the utility of it as a payments method or otherwise, or actually using the technology to complete contracts and all the different types of uses. So I think I think this is the beginning. I think we're going to see it increase, and I think really the one thing that's going to take it forward is the ability to use cryptocurrency as a currency, right? That I think that's where the mass adoption is going to come, and as the Teslas of this world, as the PayPals, Squares accepted as a form of payment, I think we're going to see that increasing adoption.
Yeah, I think to kind of echo part of Alice's point, from a Silicon Valley VC's perspective, right? It's working with all the early stage startups. One thing I would say is that adoption is not easy to happen, right? It takes a lot of effort, and the technology need to be mature enough, and you have to hit the right timing, right? So CryptoKitties and NFTs have been out there and making a lot of buzz in the 2017, but it didn't really take off until recently, right? And as Jason previously mentioned, it takes a lot of infrastructure building, right? The network need to be ready, consumer devices need to be ready, people's access to different technology and people's understanding about different technology need to be ready in order for things to happen, right? So I think I really agree with what Alice just mentioned. Although despite all the hypes or the excitement of what's going on in the crypto and blockchain industry at this point, from an institutional perspective, and also if you look at the this technology from a global perspective, right? What's happening outside the U.S. and North America, what's happening in Asia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa, right? So I think this is just a beginning of a new chapter, and people tend to overhype on the short-term potential of the new technology, and while underestimating what it takes for the technology to be mature enough, and what it takes for the community to be nurtured enough to for the technology to really grow, and for the use case to really develop. So yeah, I think despite all the hype, we are still at the early stage. I don't use cryptocurrency every day for payment. I might do a little bit trading here and there. I might use it as long-term investment, but the utility value of cryptocurrency in general is just not there yet. So I think it's definitely the beginning of something that's amazing, something that's going to change over the world, but it's something that's going to take time.
Ryan, I agree with you on some of those points there, because if you look at different markets, as you mentioned, Latin America or Asia, credit cards didn't actually impact those markets, right? Where North America, credit cards started in the 1950s. It took a long time for the adoption and usage of credit cards, where in other markets, digital payments, telephone payments in the Philippines have been around for almost 20 years. They don't really have credit cards there. They have digital payments on their telephones going back and forth. So different markets react to adoption slightly different. You look in China, you have the WePay and Alipay system that overtook digital cards or payment cards or bank cards. And yet in Canada, we've had EFT, for years and years and years. And yet the battle between EFT, credit cards, debit cards, payment methods, barter systems, crypto, all these different methods of payments have been slow to adopt. But again, as I said earlier, the early 90s, we came up with this idea from the internet space of how to exchange information and value. And it took so long. PayPal started in 99. Today, they've just finally announced the crypto usage of stuff, but yet they're a digital payments company by far, right? That's what their whole objective was when it first created. And even before that, it was called an ePay, which was electronic payments. right? So I think through this whole process of adoption, today we're seeing massive adoption because it's in the news, it's in the information that's out there, but we're also seeing support from regulators. We're seeing support from processes to support the efficiencies, the support of making sure that people are protected as well. That has a lot to do with, I believe, a lot to do with how we're seeing massive adoption in the whole usage. So, whether it's the securities organizations, whether it's the financial support groups, whether it's the banks wouldn't be in the position they are today with supporting crypto if there wasn't the regulations. And that's where we're seeing massive financial support in the industry because of that.
Yeah, awesome. And I want to come back to regulation, but maybe before we jump to that, I want to talk about future trends, because you're kind of alluding to it there a little bit, Jason. Like, what are some of the kind of the future trends you see right now happening in the space over the next, call it, I was going to say 5 years, but realistically 1 to 2 years, because that's how fast the space really moves.
Well, I can speak from a payments standpoint, maybe not from investment. I think we seeing those activities happening from a payment standpoint, though. We've seen a dramatic shift in the usage of stable coins to facilitate the payment side of things. So where it used to be pretty much 95, 90%, 99% Bitcoin transactions, we're seeing much more movement towards stable coins. And that's on both incoming transactions and outgoing transactions. So I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see more CBDCs, more national bank currencies, more digital currencies that are crypto based, and we're going to see much more adoption in that scenario from a transactional standpoint for sure. From an investment standpoint, I think there's always going to be speculations. There's always going to be people looking at how do they invest and fund a business, how do they invest in and use platforms for things like earlier for new business models, right? So I think those areas are going to continually grow and continue to be a part of our world. More usage of things like NFTs will probably come out where people will use them as these facilitations to exchange value. But I really think in the payment standpoint, over the next 5 years, we're going to see major adoption to digital currencies that are crypto or blockchain based, but that are distributed and issued by countries and or major markets.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, what's going to happen within the crypto industry is that the utility value of crypto will be further developed, right? So I think at this point, the utility value of crypto and how we are using these cryptocurrencies on a daily basis could be trading and DeFi around these financial features that come with a crypto. But what are the non-financial features and applications and different type of use cases can we develop to leverage, regardless of the security or the decentralized nature of these tokens and of these systems is still a question mark at this point, right? So I think what's happening in the recent months with NFTs is a very good bridge towards use cases like gaming, social media, content creation, influencer network to these realms, right? But can we take it further and figure out, like, is there any intersection between cryptocurrency with artificial intelligence, right? What's the and at this point we see some early development on how cryptocurrency is acting like a transaction layer for a few virtual world, for a few metaverses at this point, right? People are using cryptocurrencies to transact in-game items, to represent each piece of the virtual land or virtual properties, and we see those things are happening right now. But how can we take a step further and using crypto to represent the digital identity layer, for example, right? Or build the interoperability between different type of metaverses so that the data can be consistent throughout of all these different virtual worlds. I think there are a lot of discussions and ideas that's floating around in the community that kind of overlap between the transmedia community, the crypto community, and the AI community. And I think, this kind of intercepted area is some, you can always find something that's interesting and something that's particularly creative and could be very likely the next big use case for the cryptocurrency in general.
I would just add to that. I think, I expect continued and accelerated convergence between the traditional financial services world and the crypto financial services world. I think it's, how easy it is to trade stocks today. We're already seeing that on the crypto side, but I think the decision is going to be one or the other. Like it's going to be one day you're doing that versus it's just these two separate worlds. Regulation is going to help enable that. Same thing on the payment side, right? It's going to be choice. Are you using your debit card, your Visa card? Are you going to pay using your Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever the case may be? Like, I really do think it's just going to continue. That intersection is going to continue. It's going to be driven by the corporate world, continued investments. I think one day it'll probably be pretty standard to see on a balance sheet a line item that has the crypto investments. Like, I don't think it's going anywhere, and it's just going to, rather than sort of exist in these two separate worlds, it's going to be a continued convergence and intersection, as Ryan has said as well, from a financial services perspective.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and you kind of hit on it, Alice, a little bit. And I do want to get into this as our last kind of topic here before we wrap up. But you touched on the current regulatory developments in Canada. Are you care to elaborate a little further just on the changes and how MOGO is dealing with it? Yeah.
100%. So I think, the first real regulatory change came on the Fintech side of things. And that was, earlier last year, where any entity dealing in virtual currencies had the requirement to register with Fintech for the purposes as a money services business. So here's, even recognition by the regulator that these assets are being used as a means of exchange or a medium of exchange. Those regulations continue to evolve, but they are mainly geared towards, anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing, that aspect of it, KYC. But at the end of March, we've had our Canadian securities regulators and IROC issue a joint statement on the framework to regulate crypto asset trading platforms. The OSC, Ontario Securities Commission, subsequently came out and basically gave a warning to the industry of, talk to us. Anybody that's unregulated in the space, you've got to get regulated or otherwise, watch out. I think that's great. I'm all for regulation. I think there's, like any other emerging industry, there's always bad actors. There's people that are looking to take advantage, but I'm also very much in favor of appropriate regulation. There's been with crypto with this difficulty in defining what it actually is, and the fact that it kind of skips between, is it a form, a medium, a payment? Is it an investment? Is it an asset? There's been a bit of the regulators have really had, a bit of a challenge to figure out what is this and how do we regulate it? And there's often, as we've seen in the security space, there's, you go with what you know, and this sort of tendency to want to just apply existing regulation to a new space. And some of it may be appropriate, but, I caution that, we do not want regulation to stifle innovation. We can't be trying to fit square pegs into a round hole, all of that. I do think, the securities space is the right space for regulation, but I don't think it's as simple as sort of just, putting on the existing framework and say, okay, fit within this. I think accommodations have to be made. I think, myself, MOGO, Eric, you at Coinsquare, we've been largely involved in those discussions. I think for the most part, the industry is, and the regulators are willing to listen. I think there's an opportunity here for us to work together. The problem, of course, with any regulation and legislation is it takes forever to move, and hence this, unfortunately, the default becomes, okay, well, let's fit it into the existing framework. But I think we're getting there, and I do think it sends a strong signal to the industry of you've got to get regulated. You've got to do things the right way. And I think that in turn is going to increase consumer confidence. That is going to accelerate that adoption, the convergence of these various things that we've talked about, because at the end of the day, we are talking about money in some form here, and people do need that protection and that confidence. And I think that will come with increased regulation.
Eric, I had a very interesting, lengthy conversation with BC Securities today, actually, which was for the first time I heard them clearly define the separation between commodities, securities, and currency, which was great because I think that they're really getting a firmer hold of how they separate and how they define and how they regulate or how they don't regulate as to what they cover or what they don't cover. And I think that'll help organizations, especially in Canada, really nail down where they stand as to how to service the market. And it was a really empowering conversation I had with them today. I think that's exciting for the Canadian industry for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to kind of bring up from Alice's point is that the relationship between regulation and innovation sometimes is, to me, I think is sometimes proper regulation actually encourage innovation, right? So think about it, like the opposite side of having proper regulation is having no regulation, and that has been kind of like the status quo of the cryptocurrency industry for quite a long time. And at that point, right, for the entrepreneurs, for the business operators, and for the consumers, they are in the gray area, right? They don't know what's right and what's wrong, what's legal, what's illegal, and they need to try to navigate the gray area and try to find a place where they feel safe, but they don't know for sure, right? So with a proper regulation in place, we will have very clear messages on what's right, what's wrong, what's legal, what's illegal. And for the entrepreneurs, for the business operators, and the consumers, they have a clear guideline on what to do and what not to do. And they understand, this type of innovations is good innovation, and this type of innovations could be some bad innovation and I should stop doing that, right? So I think, having the proper regulation in place, having, crystal clear guidance on what's right and what's wrong is definitely necessary for the industry to grow further, and also for to further encourage the mainstream adoption, the mass market adoption of cryptocurrency in general.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. And Jason, that's great to hear that the BC Securities Commission is starting to make that distinction. I think regulatory clarity is coming. And it's happening quicker than we think. I mean, at Coinsquare we've been talking about it for a while, but I think we're finally at the final innings here, where the regulators are starting to make some decisions on how they want to regulate the space. So it's great to see. We are out of time. So I want to thank everyone on the panel for their time here. I thought the discussion was awesome, and yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the speakers on the panel.
Absolutely, real pleasure to spend the time with everybody today.
Thanks very much.
Likewise, guys.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.